Everyone. So tonight I'm Jovi Marie and we're in the Jovi Marie Talk Show. We have special guest and we are going to be going. He's not new to the channel. His name is Edward Garcia and he's been on with Mike Lee and we're going to go a bit more deeper in what he has done with his mentors, training, techniques, and also motivation basically. He has a big old experience. So we're gonna go a little bit more detail. And thank you for coming on to the channel, Edward. So he has the experience 1988 to 1993. You did boxing at Stockton Police League, right? And
Yeah,
your coach was Frank Douglas?
DOBALES, Frank DOBALES.
DOBALES, Frank
Yeah,
DOBALES. So
right.
tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So thank you for having me again. Always, it's just been a great experience. So once again, I appreciate it.
Okay.
But yeah, getting more in depth into that, my training history and experiences. Yeah, I started boxing in 1988. I think I kind of got um yeah, I explained a little more when I was there on the last interview. I might have touched on it. I mean, so growing up, my dad used to always bring over people when the big fights would happen in the early '80s, and I kind of was exposed to watching all these great fighters from the time. So those were like my childhood heroes, like the great fights that in the early '80s, like the Aaron Pryor versus Arguello fight. Um, Leonard Hearns in '81, Hagler Hearns in '85. So like, and even to this day, those fights are considered just immortally classics. So, but me, I just remember being a kid and seeing these fights live, like they were happening in my just. So those were my heroes naturally growing up. So by the time I was like 12, around '87, I want to say, I was like, my dad used to have a punching bag in the backyard,
Oh,
and it was made out of canvas or something. So I remember I would punch it without gloves, and it would scrape my knuckles real bad. And so then finally, I got myself some of these little Everlast kind of uh, small punching bag gloves, and then I started hitting the bag more. My dad started showing me some technique and form until finally I wasn't satisfied just hitting the bag anymore, and I'm emulating. Back in the day, we had VCRs,
yeah.
so around 85, 86, 87, I remember my mom on Christmas and on my birthday, she used to ask me all the time, if there's anything I wanted for Christmas or something. And I used to always tell her, whatever you do, as long as you just get me that stack of blank VHS tapes. They used to come in packs of 3 or 5 or something, and
Yes.
there were blanks.
Okay.
So all I did all the time was I would record the matches that came on TV on ABC, CBS. On weekends they used to have championship fights.
Yeah.
Wide World of Sports used to have boxing almost every weekend, at least twice a month. And then CBS would have Schlitz Liquor Boxing Tour. They would have championship fights.
Hmm.
They don't even do that no more nowadays. Everything you got pays pay-per-view now, everything. But back then, the big fights were on like HBO, and so I would record just all the fights, and I would study the tapes.
Oh,
I would
wow.
like slow motion those things,
Okay.
like the actual, just and a lot of my that's how I would, and I would emulate it on the boxing bag in the backyard. So finally, I was like, okay, enough punching the bag. I need to go. I want to go to a real boxing gym now. I
Okay.
have an understanding of some of the basics just from self study and the stuff my dad showed me, that his interpretation of, he used to box as a teenager too when he was in the Philippines. um so just I took all that and I said, hey dad, or papa I used to call him, where's the real boxing gym at? So we ended up going. He took me to the police athletic league on
Okay.
Weber Street in Stockton, and it's basically the Stockton Police Department funded the facility
Okay.
for the youth. So that's why it's called a PAL. I think there's different PALs all over the country. I think every city has a PAL pretty much. Not
Oh,
every city, but usually every city that has a decent population. I don't know how much nowadays, but I think they still exist around the United States and different states and stuff. But so I remember this gym in particular was we drove up, and I had drove down this street with my parents numerous times, and I never knew this was. So basically, it was an old abandoned train station. It was
really?
on, yeah, it was an old abandoned train station that probably hadn't been a train station for at least 40, 50 years at this point.
Okay.
And it was adjacent to these train tracks, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Weber Street kind of runs through downtown Stockton, but this area was east of downtown. So it was kind of more on getting into like the older, I want to say just more the more impoverished areas
Okay.
of the side of the town. Like all the houses there were at least 100 years old once you're driving that on East Weber. So we pull into this huge fence that was open. It was like a 12-foot high fence that
Okay.
surrounded the old train station, and there's cars in there. And then we open the door, and basically it's a boxing gym in there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we walk in, and my dad basically signs me up. So at the time, the man who was in charge of running the gym was Frank DOBALES. So I think he was hired by the city to run that program. And he was a professional boxer
Okay.
in his day. I don't know what his record was, but he actually made an appearance, a brief. I don't know if you know if it's credited or if he's credited in the credits of the movie, but the movie Fat City, and I mentioned this in the video with Mike in our previous video.
Yes.
The movie Fat City was filmed here in Stockton, and it starred Stacy Keach and Jeff Bridges.
Okay.
And it's a very, very it had known movie at the time. I think a lot of people still remember it. It was a movie that was um, converted from a book. It was originally a novel called
Okay.
Fat City, I believe, and it was written by a man who lived in the San Rafael area
Mm-hmm.
in Northern Bay. So the movie was basically evolved from a book.
Oh, wow.
So, but it was about the lives of agricultural workers that lived in Stockton and the boxing scene at the time that was going on throughout the smaller town. It was even a smaller town than it is now. Now the Stockton's probably a good 400,000 or 500,000 people, maybe.
Okay.
But at the time in the 1960s and 70s, yeah, it was a very, very still maybe a small, maybe 150 to 250,000 people, and a lot of agricultural workers, and there was a really strong um, boxing scene going on here at the time.
Okay.
So Frank DOBALES was in the movie. He made a cameo appearance. I'm not sure what part of the movie he's in there, but he was in there. And there's a few of them,
Okay.
of Stockton fighters that appeared in that movie at the time. And so my dad told me this, when he found out that Frank was in that gym, and we saw him in there. He was like, actually, he was in the movie Fat City. I was like, really? But he tells me this after we signed up. And one of the other coaches there was a sweetheart of a man. His name was Alex, and I forget his last name. He was another pro fighter. Um, he walked with a limp. Um, really, really great man. I forget his last name, but his name was Alex. Um, another another trainer that came in there that used to help out was a guy named, I forget his last name, but his name was Rich.
Rich.
And he's actually still to this day, I believe I've seen him in the corner of Nate and Nick Diaz, the MMA fighters.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's their boxing coach to this day
Oh,
because I've
wow.
seen him, you know, in their in their corner.
Okay.
So I guess Coach Rich still works with fighters, and he just transitioned into the MMA realm of sports. So I remember him being there. When I was growing up, there was a fighter named a little older than me. His name was Rodney Jones.
Okay.
He he actually had just turned professional when I started there. When I started training there.
Okay.
Yeah, another fighter was Esteban Cervantes. He was really a good fighter. He fought Benny Pazienza, I think, in the mid '90s. Pazienza, of course, was a pro fighter, well known throughout. You know, yeah, he fought world champion a few times. Esteban, I think they fought in Connecticut in the mid '90s.
Okay.
But yeah, that was, you know, he went the distance with Vinny Pazienza, so that, you know, that was a good thing. Rodney Jones, I can't remember if he won a title or not, but I want to say he might have. Um, but he had a real decent career, and I
Okay.
think he was even a sparring partner for Terry Norris, who fought out of San Diego, Hall of Fame fighter. Um, but no, so there was a lot of good quality fighters in that gym. Uh, there was another fighter there too, pro fighter Tony Dominguez.
Okay.
He was, I believe, out of the neighboring town of Manteca, but he fought out of Stockton. He was a solid fighter. Um, so you know, we had a lot of people to look up to in that gym.
Yeah.
Um, I had my first two amateur fights there. Um, I lost my first fight. It was a really good fight. You know, actually, it was my favorite fight because that was the one that that made me, even though it was a close fight, I
Mm-hmm.
felt like regardless of the outcome of that one, that was the one that really made me like, you know, I belonged in that ring. You know, like it was really a a great experience for me. And one of the people that fought with me, it was in Reno, and it was at the Reno Fairgrounds in 1991 in August. It was like the first or second week of August that year, and we drove down. Alex, Alex, I think he was there, but basically they drove like five of us kids to Reno, and we all fought, and we stayed in a hotel in Reno, and then we fought the next day. And but one of the guys that fought with me that day was Javier Gonzalez, and me and Javier went to high school together. And Javier went on to have a, a very successful amateur career. I think he had close to 100 amateur fights. Javier, if you're out there, you've been watching this video, you better put a comment on the section because you know we stay in touch to this day. So I'm giving you everybody out there. Javier was probably one of the best amateur fighters out of Stockton. So leave a comment, Javier, when you see this video. But he's still my friend to this day. We actually worked in the same department, but different locations. So no, he won his first fight, and he also went on to defeat notable professional fighters like he fought. He actually knocked. I don't know if he knocked the guy out. I want to say he did.
Okay.
He stopped it. He did have a TKO stoppage of some kind over a very known well pro fighter who actually knocked out Roy Jones.
Really?
Glenn Johnson. Yeah, Glenn Johnson knocked out Roy Jones in the professionals. And I want to say Javier beat Glenn Jones in the amateurs. So, you know, that's like I said, I'm giving you a lot of credit on the, you know, so that's what I do. You know, I like to give people that I know personally um, the spotlight they deserve because a lot of these people were in my life at
Yeah.
one point or another, regardless of the significance. You know, that's just the way I'm. A lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
Um, but so yeah, up until '92, I won my second fight. Um, I think it was '92.
So
91
92
was
and 3.
91 was my first fight.
Okay.
I started I want to say I started in '88. but I didn't have my first amateur fight till like 91. Then I had another fight in 92. And I won that fight. And then in 92, something happened. It was actually within a month of that second fight. Was a time I don't remember why or well, I do remember. So I think I mentioned this to Mike in the other video. In spring of 92, I remember I won my second fight, but I found myself just on occasion I used to go to this newsstand.
Mm-hmm.
Um I used to get my boxing magazines there because back in the day, there was no internet, and to kind of keep up on the current events of fights that took place and this and that, you had to get a magazine that had a list of the rankings and who fought who recently in the last 2 months and all that. And I think Mike used to get the same. So, but I went to the newsstand to get the new issue, and there was someone standing in that area. There was maybe a few people in my way. So,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to say, "Oh, excuse me, can I get past?" I'll just let them, whatever they're doing. And when they move out of the way, I'll get my boxing issue out of that off that area where they were standing in. But where I kind of was in the same area, there was martial arts magazines as well.
Yeah.
And I reached over and I grabbed one just to skim through it. And I look at through it. I always love martial arts. Um, I loved, everybody loved, Bruce Lee and Van Damme at the time. I think Bloodsport had been out maybe a couple of years.
Yeah.
So, those were the years of the real golden age of martial arts movies. Like
Yeah.
the late 80s, early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, martial arts movies had blown up. Um, and of course, UFC and no holds barred matches followed in sequence like after that. And so yeah, the I always had an appreciation and admiration for martial arts, and I think in the back of my mind, I always felt, oh, maybe I'm gonna venture into this one day. But I grabbed the magazine, I'm looking through it, and I see Filipino martial arts. There was like an article on it or something, or something about Dan Inosanto was on there, and he was selling either a video or a book or something, and it said, get your copy today or something. I don't even. So I bought the magazine,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course I got my boxing ring magazine too, wherever it was. I went home and I showed it to my dad. I said, "Hey, you see this page right here? You have any idea what this is?" And he looks at it. He goes, "Oh yeah, that's what do they call that? That's they fight with sticks. That's ESCRIMA or
Screaming.
Arnis." He said Arnis, and so Arnis, depending on the dialect, they might refer to it as different. It's the same art, not the same art, but same umbrella, just
Uh-huh.
depending on the. So I was like, "Where have you ever known anybody in the Philippines that did you ever seen that stuff?" And he was like, "Yeah, there's about a few old guys that used to teach around here." And I'm like, really? When was the last time you seen them? He was like, "Oh, it's been a while. It's been a few years. I don't even know if they're around anymore." I was like, "Well, can you find out?"
Great.
Yeah, he was like, "Yeah, yeah, you know what?" And back in the day, my dad used to have this fat looking it was like a phone book. He kept all his
Oh,
phone contacts in it, and
yeah.
it was this fat, and he had all his phone numbers, names, and all this stuff in there. He pulls it out, puts his glasses on, and he starts going through. He's like, man, maybe this. Let me see who would know. Who would remember those guys? He's looking through his phone. And then he made a few phone calls. I remember, and he was talking in Tagalog, so I didn't know what he was saying. But he used to always answer the phone. Oh, oh, uh, anong balita? It's like saying, hey, what's up? How are you? But and then he's talking to Tagalog the whole time. Um, and he hangs up, and he's quiet. He's just kind of looking at his book, turning more pages. Like, did they say anything? Oh no, no. They said they don't remember. They're gonna let me know if they can get if they still have someone's number or something. I'm like, all right. So a week goes by. Now I'm getting impatient. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna ask some of my friends. So I had a lot of Filipino friends growing up because it's the community. So I asked a couple of them, and some of them knew um, who to ask. So I remember there was one guy, and I can't remember what his name was, but the kid was on house arrest or something. So he
Oh,
was like, and then we got him on the phone, and then next thing you know, he said, all right, we'll come over there. He hangs up, and my friend's on the phone asking, I'm like, what happened? I don't know. He said, just come over. He had to get off the phone. Like someone was yelling at him in the background. I guess, I guess the kid couldn't be on the phone either, right? So we go to the house, we knock on the door, and he answers, and he goes, "Hey, hey," and we're like, "Hey, do you know where that address?" And he goes, "Oh, you're talking about CABALES, SERRADA, ESCRIMA. Is that the one you meant?" I'm like, and we're like, "I guess, is that it?" And he was like, "Yeah." He said, "Just go over there, drive on Harding Way. It's right next to Gong's." And we're
so
like, "Gong Lee's restaurant?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then we heard yelling in the background again. He goes, "Oh, I gotta go," and he shuts the door. He wasn't even supposed to have visitors. He was in trouble. He was like one of those kids that get in trouble or whatever. Um, so then when he tells us, one of my friends that was with us, it was three of us that went looking for the place. One of them kind of came out with it. He was like, "Hey, you know what? I know who they're talking about. I don't know if it's the same group, but there's like groups that come out and do demonstrations at the Barrio Fiesta every year, and the Barrio Fiestas every second weekend of August in Stockton at the Filipino Center
okay.
on El Dorado, right across street from the police station, actually. And I never knew that, but one of the kids that was with us did, and so um, it's funny because after that year, I started going to the Barrio Fiesta every year, but um, yeah, not every year, but almost every year, yeah. But so I think I mentioned the whole thing how that played out in the last video.
Yeah.
We had when I was telling Mike about it. I pretty much we showed up. I got the number off the window that was up there to contact if you want to join the class, what days it's on, and the rest is history with that. I never turned back after that, and pretty much I kept boxing. Um, at the same time I started ESCRIMA. Like I kept doing it for at least another whole year. I remember that. I kept
So what?
training in boxing whenever I could. I would try to like stay consistent as much as I could, but I was also juggling doing ESCRIMA at the same time because I started joining. And I think 93 um, was my last fight there. Oh, no, wait, take that. So after I started ESCRIMA, about several months later, I started training at a different boxing gym.
Okay.
It was called Fat City, actually. It was named after the movie. And I want to say that's where I really learned more about boxing as far as technique is concerned.
Okay.
Because Frank was more, he didn't really coach you too much on technique per se. He was more of a motivational coach
Okay.
and kind of like learn as you go along through trial and error. And that's not a bad thing, I guess. But Frank was more that kind of a coach. But when I got to Fat City, oh man, they actually coached you like how to step, footwork, pivots, um, pairing, skip outs, um, just different ways to cover yourself. Just the works, counter punching with the pads. I mean, the focus mitts. It was just a whole nother experience. And I look back now, it's like I'm really grateful for them because they didn't get paid to do none of that stuff. I think so the history about Fat City is that place was kept open by a man named Jack Cruz.
Okay.
He was an old guy back then, and I vaguely remember him. He came in once in a blue moon, but he was the father-in-law of a fighter that fought out of Stockton in the 70s and early 80s, a light heavyweight named Alvaro Yaqui Lopez.
Oh wow.
Yaqui Lopez, well, his wife was Jack Cruz's. No, his wife, her dad was Jack Cruz.
Okay.
So Yaqui was his son-in-law. and Jack Cruz was one of the men who actually was a great coach himself.
Okay.
He actually taught just about everything I knew. Well, actually, everything I learned from Brett Gamble, who was really the guy who ran the place.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he didn't have a extensive in ring. He was just. I think he had a couple amateur fights himself, and that obviously sparred a lot. But he was a student of the game,
Okay.
uh, and everything he learned from Jack Cruz, from what I remember him telling me. And I actually credit Brett the most with everything I know. Although I did pick up a lot of stuff from Benny Kassing. He was in my corner with Brett in one of my fights at Manteca High School in '93. I won that one, and then I won the one at the where was that location at? It was
So you had, so
the
it was Fat
American
City
Legion
Box.
Hall. I'll go ahead.
You had Fat City Boxing Club, the
Yeah,
old
so
original American Street location, and that,
correct,
right?
correct. So
And
it was
then,
upstairs. It was upstairs. It was an old. It was so you ever see? I know in Chicago over there, you have a lot of buildings that look like this. So you have these buildings. They're
Mhm.
like businesses down below,
Yeah,
and then upstairs, there's something else upstairs where there's all these windows everywhere
yeah.
that look like they could be apartments or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like that. But upstairs, so downstairs was this old bar called the Shamrock.
Okay.
It was an old bar that is probably 100 years old. It looked like the time. It was like you walk in there, like everything's made out of wood.
Okay.
Um, and the tables, the bar, everything. And I remember. So when you go up, when you walk the next door, it's like literally 2 feet away, 2 or 3 feet away. There was an old Indian, a wooden Indian man, like a face of a wooden Indian man with the feathers,
Yeah.
but it was like carved out, like out of wood, and it was above the door. So when you open that door, do you see these long stairs that go up like high? Like you ever see the movie Rocky,
Yeah.
where Stallone walks up to see his trainer, and he's
Yes.
walking up these long stairs, just like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it looked just like that. Except when you get to the top, it's not his trainer's house, it's not his apartment, it's the gym.
Okay.
Yeah, so the gym was up there like that. And
Oh, that's awesome.
there was this ring that we had up there in Fat City. Apparently, it was like super huge.
Was
But
it?
apparently it was like 100 years old almost. Like apparently that ring was used in a championship fight in like 1912.
Okay.
Some
Wow.
yeah, some famous fight that took place with some famous fighters. I don't know if it was Jack Dempsey or Jack or somebody. I can't remember. One of those classic old fighters.
Okay.
Jack Johnson or somebody fought in that ring. Is the legend we were told. I don't know how true that was, but that's what we were told to believe that's how old that ring was.
Wow.
So but that was there was another trainer in there. I think I mentioned this too. Fel Clemente. I
Mhm.
think his name is Felipe Clemente. He fought um some of the great featherweights at the time.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
he was an import from the Philippines. So there was a lot of Filipino fighters that were brought in by a guy named Davy Thompson.
Okay.
Davy Thompson was an American guy, Caucasian guy. He he had this. I guess his program was at the time was in the '70s. He was a promoter and a manager um, in some way, and he would import fighters from the Philippines to come fight here in Stockton,
Okay.
or at least fight out of promotional events here in the area,
Mm-hmm.
Northern California, Southern California, or whatever. And just not to get off topic real quick, but I remember when I was a little kid, I must have been like 5 years old. I
Mm-hmm.
remember there was this fighter named, oh man, I forget his name. Oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. But there was a fighter that used to he spent the a weekend with us one night, and I don't remember why. I don't know if he was going through some. He was a friend of my dad's, and he was going through some. I think his name was Alberto Flores or Al, it was a Filipino fighter from this, but he spent the night at our house because he was going through some residential issues where he was staying. I can't remember, but he was one of Davy Thompson's fighters.
Was
Yeah,
he?
yeah, Davy Thompson. I wonder whatever happened to him, but yeah, he was a local promoter. Um, but Felipe Fel Clemente was one of his fighters, and I would say Fel Clemente probably fought more people that are in the Hall of Fame now
Okay.
than anybody that's ever fought out of Stockton. Yeah, I don't even know if Fel's still around. I knew his son. His son used to come train there too. But that was from 92 to 93. Yeah, I was training at that. I had a couple more fights. And then uh
So I have you also in 1992 to 2006, you trained in CABALES, SERRADA, ESCRIMA
right. You're
under
right,
your
correct.
Grandmaster Vincent CABALES Sr.,
Yes.
son of the late Grandmaster Angel CABALES. And I know you
Right.
touched
Mm,
about him, on
mm,
our last interview. Um, so within those years, because when you train for all this length of time, what was your motivation to like keep on going? And you have all these coaches that you have that were amazing, right? So how can you explain where it's like all these years that you're doing these trainings and you keep
mm.
on going through it? What's the motivation? Why um it's like a passion, or you know what drove you to go to these extremes or long lanes, or does that make sense?
Yeah. The question, yeah, totally. I understand. If you're asking about Serrada Scream in particular,
Hmm.
I would say I mean, just and this is looking in hindsight, right?
Hmm.
That far back, my biggest motivation probably was just mainly two things. One was I was just so fascinated that that a culture that I'm a part of was had its own martial art.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I learned later on, as the years passed, just how special that particular style of eskrima was as special as it was. I didn't realize that till about a few years into it. But initially, what stayed what stayed as from a scale 1 to 10, it was like a 12.
Okay.
The
So
motivation was just the fact that it was my culture.
yeah.
Yeah, and then to add a little more, add more cheese to it.
Right.
When you showed up to class and you start seeing things that you didn't know, you don't even see. It's like you were in for a treat because
Okay.
and you just to realize that if I stick with this, I'm going to be able to do that stuff.
Right.
It just hits home like, wow, I want to be able to do that. And if I just, stay consistent, which I'm already motivated to do because You don't got to motivate me. I'm learning. I'm finding out that all this, how important this school is, and how this history it has, and the culture that I'm so like proud to be a part of. Excuse me, a part of.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I didn't really need that much motivation. Yeah, I wasn't in a hurry to learn it because I already knew how to box.
Okay.
So it wasn't like I wanted to learn how to. Oh, I got you know I was being like I got to defend myself. I'm in a hurry. I need something quick. No, no, I wasn't. That was never the motivation.
Okay. It was more of
It
an
was,
art.
it was more. It was cultural, like more than anything at first, and then all the other little add-ons that came that made it even more, just enhanced it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're talking about the Escrima in particular,
Yes.
yeah.
And anything else with the Excrema itself and the training, because you have all this training where it's like
Mm-hmm.
you're putting in the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you put in the time and the effort, and you go back and you review your steps, um, how did you study where it's like, okay, did you take notes? Did you go more into detail? Because I know I love recording, so I can see the techniques a little bit more and to perfect the technique itself, were there.
Yeah, so I think we briefly kind of me and Mike were kind of touched on that a bit too. Like back then, um I actually have some footage that I sent Mike there that I had on DVD, but
Mhm.
it's just random footage of that I was able to get my hands on from a friend who taped a few class sessions we had. And
Nice.
I converted it to DVD years ago, but
Mhm.
it was originally on an 8 millimeter,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, and then we converted it to I think we converted it to VHS, and then we converted it to DVD.
DVD.
So it was converted a few times, but I actually sent Mike a copy of some of that. So maybe if you see him, tell him
Oh
to share it
yeah.
with you. But it's just random class footage. It's not really like, hey guys, this is instructional, and we're gonna do this. No,
Oh no.
it was just someone who was recording us, in class, and um. But as far as training, like training and being able to keep 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 proficient to where I was starting to progress.
Hmm.
I think I mentioned to you before, like I didn't really have any video. It's just like you just had to write it down. Like I remember I was maybe showing you before, like here's a book. Like this is just some of my notes over like a 14-year period.
Okay.
Majority of it was between 1998 to 2006.
Hmm.
But like see this right here. This is just like how I was able to remember a lot of stuff
With the.
that of everything of just techniques I learned.
Okay.
See, so if this was just I don't know I don't know you know um how that would if that can work for everybody. I mean, I guess nowadays everybody has a phone,
Right.
but I mean, yeah, that's very like primitive. You know what I mean? So for what I had available to me at the time. But as far if you're asking me, like, how was I able? Obviously, the motivation part. You asked me about it. But if you're gonna like maybe focus on like how did I manage this to progress
Hmm.
and get the techniques down to the level I did. That was one way.
Yeah.
I wrote down pretty much 95 90 95% of everything I've ever learned.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, I really don't even have to look at it anymore.
Okay.
It's just I just keep it. It's now it's like I remember when I was doing jujitsu for so long.
Yeah.
Pretty much stopped training eskrima for a while because jujitsu just too. I was so absorbed and just focusing, on getting proficient and good at jujitsu. And I got up to my purple belt. I mean, we'll get into that, the progression of that later, but as we go along. But there were times where, as as the injuries started to pile up in jujitsu, but I wanted to, well, okay, I can't do jujitsu right now. I'm waiting for my knee or my back to heal, my herniated disc and blah blah blah. Well, let me practice the scream. I haven't picked up the stick in a while, and let's see if oh my gosh, I'll be doing some techniques with my son or something, because I was always teaching them,
Yeah.
but all of a sudden they started asking me all these questions, and all these moves just came out of my mind, stuff that I haven't thought of in 12, 15 years. It
Oh,
just
wow.
came out easy, like boom, just I'm just like, now I understand why Vince kept me on basics forever,
Yeah.
because everything spawns. It's like everything just comes naturally after. You don't even have to think about it. Like I haven't thought about some of this stuff in a long time because I've just been training jujitsu. Now
Mm-hmm.
it came out like it's been like I didn't even realize I remembered it.
No.
Yeah, it was just like, I mean, I don't know if it's because I have a photographic memory maybe or something, but
Okay.
I remember it was kind of funny because I remember in class years ago, one of my fellow students at the Escrima school asked Vince some random question about what happens if someone grabs your stick while you're doing or something. And it was something that had nothing to do with the curriculum. It was just some random question, like a what if,
Yeah.
someone does some crazy thing, like they just grab you this way or some weird, not even just some amateurish approach to like, what if this happens, right? And Vince did this move to show you what you do if someone does that, like
Mm-hmm.
someone grabs your stick or something. And then we looked at him like, wow. And we're like, did you just like maybe figure that out now, or was that what you would always do if someone did that?
Right.
And then he looked at me. He was like, "Oh no! Like I knew what to do if someone was to try something like that." I was like, "Okay." And when was the last time you had to think of that? He was like, "Oh, I'll remember."
Oh,
So
wow.
now, fast forward to my experience. Now we're fast forward what almost 20 years later. It happened to me. It was like my kids were asking me something, and it's just like instinctively these three different three different possibilities came out of what I would do if this happened, if this happened, and this happened.
Right.
And I hadn't even thought of the initial move in like so long.
Oh,
So
wow.
I just wasn't, but because Vince used to drill us in basics. He would drill us and drill us and drill us on the basics forever and ever and ever. It wasn't until like from 92 to
Mm.
like 97. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6. So for 5 years straight, all we did was basics, basics,
Okay.
basics, basics. And we did them over and over and over and over. It got to a point that we can practice our techniques and whatever we were doing and have a conversation about something else that didn't have nothing to do with what we were doing. Like we can talk and have a conversation. Like you can tell me something that happened at the gas station and we're practicing a screamer like full speed.
Oh, wow.
Not the flowing drill, but just like I strike you, you do your move real fast, and then you strike me back, and I'm doing it real fast, and you're telling me about something that happened at the gas station. That's how second nature it becomes to us because he just made us drill it and drill it and drill it so much,
Yeah.
and then all the variations and what ifs come off of that later, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or it becomes easy.
There you go.
Yeah.
And you guys were using both sides of your brain while you were doing that because you're actually
Mhm.
speaking and also training at the same time. That's amazing.
It's just like we didn't even have to use
But you
God
were.
inside. It's just like, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, but after a while, you just don't have to try.
Yeah.
You don't even have to try anymore. It's just there. I guess you know what? Not to sound kind of nerdy about it, or but or you ever see the movie Enter the Dragon, right?
Hmm.
Okay, remember in the beginning when he's talking to the Shaolin monk, an elderly Shaolin monk, and that Shaolin monk asks him, "What do you do when the enemy attacks?" And he goes, I guess at the end of the answer was he was like, I don't have to do anything because it does it by itself. You know what I mean? So because he's already reached the level of emptiness.
There you go.
So when you reach emptiness, it's like it's blank. Like everything you learned is gone now. It's like you don't even think about it no more. And I remember when I first saw that movie Enter Dragon, I didn't understand that's too philosophical for me. But now, looking back, I guess again in hindsight, when like in JKD, it's you know, partiality, and then and eventually you get to emptiness. And when you get to that, it's like really basically the technique is in you now. It's part of you. You don't even have to think about it, you know.
I
And
like that.
that's the level of that you always want to get to. And any, because now it's like you don't. Yeah, it's just there.
Yeah.
It's like it's there. Like it is the way you don't have to think about it. Like a guy who changes tires for a living at the tire shop, he can do it blindfolded.
Right.
You know, he can change a tire blindfolded. It's the same way. So yeah,
That's awesome. Because once you reach to that level, it's like it's just second nature,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Um, like I was going to mention too, I can't remember if we mentioned this or not, but the gentleman that helped me, um, they showed up to meet me because we really we kind of really didn't know, or maybe I didn't understand correctly. But when we trained that one weekend, my thing was I was ready to meet Mike and Roger, and I wanted to, this was going to be the first day we were going to train together, which we did.
Yes.
But it didn't occur to me that many people were going to show up because I was there and then I knew Serrada.
Yeah.
Like I kind of, maybe, maybe I just didn't, maybe Fernando mentioned it to me, but when it really hit home was when we pulled up and, Fernando kept telling me, a lot of these guys are here because they want to see the Serrada.
Yeah.
They're here for you.
Hmm.
I'm like, really?
Yeah, we
I mean,
all
I
showed
knew
up.
I was going to share. It just didn't register to me like that. I mean, I don't recall it. I knew I was going to share some Serrata because, with Fernando and Mike and Mike had this Escrima experience already, and I was eager to share it with him. But I didn't know about everybody else. Not like that. At least it didn't. I didn't. Yeah. So that would that. But what I'm grateful for is that I did know that Earl, the guy from Belleville.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's a long time student. He's been training Scream as long as I have. With one of my instructor's dad's last ranked masters.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Chuck Cadell was one of the last people who had the unique distinction of training with Vince as well. Because I remember Vince telling me that he might have been the only one, Chuck Cadell.
Okay.
This was they're getting a time where his father's health was starting to kind of fade a bit, and
Hmm.
he needed help training. This is my memory. This is from what I was told was that Vince's dad needed help to train him, and he had the opportunity to train with Vince as well
Oh wow.
because his dad was getting kind of maybe with the terminal illness that he eventually succumb to. But Vince always spoke highly of him. Always spoke highly of Chuck Cadell. I was hoping to meet him, but the individual that came and assisted me, and we
Mm-hmm.
were practicing together that day. That was Chuck Cadell's student,
Oh,
and I
wow.
had never met him to before that day.
And when you guys were training, this is
Mhm.
what I saw. I saw like the movements like flow naturally,
Right,
and you guys were like in harmony.
right.
I know I might sound dorky saying it like that, but but it was like in harmony where it's like, okay, I'm like, they've trained forever. And when
We've
you
never
said
met.
that you guys haven't
I've
met,
never
and I
met
was
him.
like,
Right. So
what?
that's the magic. That's the magic of Serrada
Mhm.
is when you're taught properly, and that's and the reputation of his instructor, Master Chuck Cadell. Hopefully, I look forward to meeting him someday. We didn't have the opportunity to meet, of course, because Earl came by himself. Um, but that's the magic of it and I expected that too because I believe um that that his instructor Chuck was of a great caliber practitioner and deserving rank master that I've always heard he was. So um for Earl to be able, me and him to be able to like you said, to train in such harmonic, you know, display.
Mhm.
I wasn't too surprised,
Okay.
um, but I was more proud. I was proud that we were able to do that. Um, yeah, that was but yeah, it was funny because yeah, we had never seen each other to that day. We had only spoken over the phone, and I was telling him that hey, I'm going to be in your area, so if you want to come by and we can train together at this school. I'm really there to train with them because I want to to train the non-classical kung fu, the Jesse Glover's approach to martial arts. But if you show up, we can train, we can practice, and he was all for it, and that's how that played out.
Yeah, and that was magical because just the two of you and then everyone else training, it was like on
Right,
um I don't know. I liked it.
right,
Like
yeah.
you said,
Mhm.
I'm like you said, you guys were trained properly, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I believe so. I told him that should I ever make it back there, I'll let him know too. So he more than likely is going to be more than happy to come back again as well. So
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I actually told him, hook up with Mike as well. Since you're so close, if you want,
Yeah.
you know, um, that's a unique group that's right there that not too many people know about
Yeah.
with the non-classical kung fu. And my only, I wish I could have spent more time than I did. I actually was initially supposed to stay there longer, but I had to come back because my son had a tournament that I wanted to come support him with wrestling. So that's why I cut my trip short.
Yeah. No, you're a good dad. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah,
Oh, that's good. That's good. So did you want to touch more base on Vincent Cabales and a little bit more about Serrada Escrima?
yeah, yeah. Just like a shoot a question, and if I can, if like there's a lot of memories. It's not all in class stuff.
Yeah.
We've been involved in each other's lives, and saw just different stages of our lives. He like I said before, like he watched me grow up, pretty much. He's seen me through different, different growth periods in my life. I think one of the things that I look back at the most was the conversations we had. So this is so when I went to the academy in 2000, one of my biggest concerns was I had already started my advanced training. So the advanced training goes like this. You basically when you start advanced training, it's never in class.
Okay.
You do it one on one.
Nice.
And so the first stage is you have to teach for 2 years. You have to teach um at the school. You start taking on teaching responsibilities. So from 98 to 2000 I did that.
Oh wow.
Um but also it's in conjunction um simultaneously with your advanced training. So but in 2000 I had to go to the academy with my new career, and then the first place I started working at was in the Monterey Salinas area.
Okay.
So I actually moved away.
Oh wow.
So that period of what was it, like 2.5, maybe 3 months, almost 3 months was the duration of the academy. That was probably the longest period I hadn't trained with Vince in that time frame between 92 to '06 was
Mm-hmm.
that 3 month period where I was in the academy, so I couldn't, right? Because I'm in the yeah. But as soon as I graduated, I moved to the location facility where I was assigned, and that's where I started my career. But um, on weekends, I would drive back to Stockton on my time off, and or on my days off, I would always drive back, and I did that for the first 9, maybe 10 months that of my career so I was pretty much still a rookie at where I was working, and but I managed to get a transfer
Okay.
to a facility that's closer to Stockton. So actually at Tracy. So that made it where okay, now I can get real consistent again. And so basically, and that was around 2001. So now I'm in full gear again, and with the training, and we're training like 2 3 times a week,
Okay.
at least twice a week at his job. So Vince worked. He's an engineer in a boiler room
Okay.
for the county hospital, San Joaquin County Hospital. So he worked nights at the time. For a long time he was working nights. I think his shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, so what happened was from 2000, basically from 98, but from 98 to 2006, the one-on-one training took place in this boiler room. So the boiler room was out. So there's this big county hospital, right? Yeah, every county hospital is big, but the property that the hospital in is it's just like this huge property. There's all these different medical buildings everywhere. There's maintenance buildings everywhere. You know how and there was this one huge building that was the size of a warehouse that was actually a boiler room.
Oh wow.
There was these three large boilers the size of a they were like the size bigger than garages, than a standard garage, and
Mm-hmm.
they were in there. So he was in charge of these boilers at night, and he was the only one there. He was the night guy, the night boiler watch engineer guy, and he had this long office adjacent inside to the boilers. There was this long office with windows where you could see the boilers out there.
Oh wow.
So we can see the boilers just sitting in the office, and then there's these business chairs, like office chairs, like the one I'm sitting in, and then there's computers everywhere, and then we just trained in there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I would probably get there like about 11:30 at night.
Okay.
So I drive up in the hospital, park outside, and even the security guard guys got to know me. And I'd go in there and I'd train with them in the boiler room from like sometimes like, or sometimes we would have a cup of coffee first,
Yeah.
but we would train from like at least like 11:30 midnight, around midnight to like 3 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
We would just train. He would just show me the advanced training. When I graduated from the advanced training, we started the master's training. Actually, the master's training was overlapped.
Okay.
Like he started teaching me masters when I was kind of almost getting done with the advanced curriculums. So there were
Mm-hmm.
curriculums he had. So they kind of like, I was already starting when I was already almost completing the curriculum of the advanced training, which was in 2003. We were already training master's techniques. So master's techniques are pretty much, you got to learn how to counter every technique you've ever learned in at least 2 different ways,
Okay.
at least, if not more, depending on the technique. So that's masters are basically counters, counters for counters. So everything that you were so drilled on, that you like we talked about in the beginning when we were all starting, I just do the same thing over and over and over and over and over. And then you train advanced techniques. You start your advanced training, and you're doing everything now. But now the only difference is your advanced training. You're training it with him.
Oh, wow.
It's not the other classmates anymore.
Okay.
It's with him one on one, and you guys are just drilling this stuff over. Me and Vince are drilling this stuff over and over and over and over and over. Knife versus blade, knife versus empty hand, stick versus knife. Just you're just drilling this stuff. Empty hand versus empty hand. Um, and then going off my notes that I had. So while we go down this list of techniques we had, and like the ones I showed you earlier in my butt binder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're gonna how do we counter this one? So now we're gonna go through all of my advanced training that I have written down, and we're gonna start a new page, and I'm writing little index cards to myself. What goes to what move? This is
Yeah.
how you this is how you counter that. This is how you counter that. This counters that move. See page 29. See page 50. I'm doing. I know it's hard to see on there, but that's how I write it. So
Okay.
now I'm learning. I'm writing down how to counter every moves on another stack of another notebook. See, so because this right here, this is all just the end result, but really these were all different notebooks at one time. The notebook got so old and decrepit and beat up that I took all the pages out and I started putting them in these plastic ones
Yeah.
over the years.
Okay.
Yeah, so it didn't used to look like that. Yeah, they were all like notebooks. So now that I keep them in there because those notebooks fell apart already.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, that's so now we started learning how we counter. But as you were asking me earlier, like it wasn't always about the training when we were in there. Some nights, there were an exceptional amount of a few times that we would take breaks. Like maybe when we started, we started maybe like getting close to 2 a.m. sometimes. And every now and then we would just stop and talk. We'd make a new so you ever go to a cafeteria in a hospital?
Yeah.
You ever visit someone in the hospital?
Mm-hmm.
That's some of the best food, huh? In there?
Right. Oh, man.
Oh yeah, no.
Especially a chocolate pudding.
Right, right. No, yeah, no, they have some good food in the hospital. So, anyways, I don't know how the history of this goes, but in that office, they if you ever seen the giant coffee makers that they had in those hospital cafeterias,
Hmm.
they're like the big old fashioned big ones, and they're like stainless steel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it
I
had the
mean,
little,
yeah, they're like real big. They're like the size of what computers used to look like.
right?
Right? They're that big. Yeah, like the tower.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a big coffee maker like that. But he had one in that office.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was just like that. And around 2 a.m., I remember I used to bring coffee, like the grain, and I'd bring it, and he would keep it in his locker
Okay.
just for us for when we train. Yeah, I
Oh,
remember that.
that's cool.
Yeah, I used to bring the coffee grain. Sometimes I'll bring the filters or whatever, but yeah, that was kind of a tradition for us.
Okay.
So um it's funny because when I was out there in Chicago with all of you, I was talking to Daryl, and he was like, you ever go to do you drink coffee? Something about asking if I want to have coffee. I was like, do I drink coffee?
Right.
I drink coffee. You know what I mean? So yeah, I remember, and I told him actually, one of the first places I stopped to get coffee when I got off the plane was Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts.
And yeah, and then he told me, you know what? You just passed the first test. Your credibility just went skyrocketed because you went to Dunkin' Donuts. You realize that, right? I'm like, I realize that now. Yeah. Right, yeah. So, but no, yeah, back to the coffee thing. We used to drink coffee, and we would just talk sometimes about what was going on in our personal life at the
Hmm.
time. Um, he would tell me his stuff that he's dealing with at home or with somebody that he's been seeing. Because when I met him, he was married, but he wasn't married as I got older. So we both had met and been in a few relationships in between the time I got married and after he, his the marriage that he was in when I met him. We watched each other. We watched the different people come into both of our lives, and we knew all of them. I
Okay.
knew all the ones he that came in his life, and he knew all the ones that were in my life. So we would talk about those things, and we would end our training sessions like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
several times. Yeah,
So
yeah.
you had a good connection with him then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And like I mentioned in the other video, it wasn't until like I think I mentioned it. It wasn't until like jujitsu kind of took over my goal in life
Hmm.
that's where it started. Like we started kind of like less contact. And of course, I didn't live I was living in the Bay Area for 12 years.
Okay.
So there was like, a little bit of a distance. I was working double shifts a lot. All my free time was with the kids at home, and then I was training jujitsu as much as I could. So I rarely was ever in Stockton between the years 2008
Hmm.
and 2008 to 2018. Yeah. Because I left in 2007. So from
Okay.
2007 to 2018.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So that's
I,
when you
I,
started the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
right. I
right?
started Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in 2007.
Okay.
Yeah. But I want to say for that good 11, maybe because we moved here, we came back here in November of 2018.
Okay.
So it's really all of 2018 I wasn't here. So it's really 2019.
Okay.
So from 2007 to 2019, I rarely came back to Stockton, and I maybe kept in touch with Vince from time to time,
Okay.
you know. So
Oh, that's good.
yeah,
So what about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? I know you had various instructors that you trained under, including
right.
Eric,
Eric
Eduardo,
Shin, yeah,
Eric Ching,
Eric Shingu,
Chingu,
right.
and then Eduardo Varga,
Fraga,
Fraga.
correct.
Did I say that correctly?
Eduardo
Carlos,
Fraga, yeah.
and then Carlos. How do you say it? Sapao?
Sapone,
Okay. And then
Sapone, yeah.
Ricardo Barrio
Barros, right,
Barros. Okay.
right.
And then Kyle Comenta,
Kyle
Cometa,
Cometa, correct.
Oliver Rich,
Oliver Reich,
right? Okay.
yeah.
And then you also have
Darlson Lira,
Mm-hmm. And then Steve.
Steve Otero.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Long story. There's a lot of story right there.
A lot of story right there.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories right there. Not this personal story, but just like the backstories of how the training and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in 2007, after I met you, like the graduate degree I got from Serrada, the master's rank, which is like the highest rank you can get in Serrada.
Mm-hmm.
So Vince is like 20 years older than me. So he awarded me that when I was 31.
Oh wow. Okay.
So from I trained from 2017 to 2000. I'm sorry, my mistake. From age 17 to age 31, and
Okay.
I was with Vince like straight, no interruptions. It's and I just felt like at the time I was still in my younger years. I believe like at 31, still young. I
Yeah.
wanted to get back to something that resembled boxing and physical, something that's really like physically challenging.
Okay.
You know, so I always understood the importance of knowing how to grapple. And obviously, like it was then, as it is now. Although wrestling, high school wrestling, collegiate wrestling has actually on the rise again.
Okay.
In popularity. With a lot of it's a lot more popular with the youth now than it was then.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, jujitsu was the premier, and it still is in its own way. But it was more still in its premier time, where if you want to learn how to grapple, you got to train jujitsu, and every martial artist should have some kind of grappling. I'm not saying you got to be a black belt, um, or anything like that. There's different styles of grappling and don't have belts. You have Russian sambo. They don't use belt ranking. Catch can wrestling, which is an old European folk style submission type of wrestling that still exists to this day. They don't have ranking.
Okay.
So you don't. I'm not saying you have to be some, but you have to have some kind of grappling to be a complete martial artist. I mean, Bruce Lee talked about that.
Yeah.
You have to have some kind of grappling. Um, you have to be proficient at it in some way, regardless of what grappling discipline it is. Because if you're not a complete martial artist. No
Yeah.
matter you can't never say never. You know that's like saying like I'll never be mugged.
Right.
Like someone will never try to mug me, or I'll never be in a car accident, or I'll never slip in the shower. You never know. You know,
Exactly.
yeah. You know, anybody can slip in the shower, and you can definitely slip in the street. So, never say never. And that's. I just felt this is a new challenge. I mean, I was still didn't have any injuries really at the time, and I felt if now's the time to do it, it's going to be now. So my first instructor in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu I was still in Stockton at the time.
Okay.
Just yeah, I was still here, but the first person that introduced me to Jiu Jitsu, I credit him as actually being my really really first person that actually coached me in Jiu Jitsu was Eric Shingu. So Eric Shingu, hey Eric, if you're out there, you and your brother Dennis, shout out to you guys. You guys are, I think you guys are still active, and anybody have the opportunity to train with them, you're doing yourself a big favor. They know their stuff. Eric Shingu was single, and see, that's what I'm saying. There's not too many people walking around today. They're going to go out of their way to give credit to people who deserve it. It's just the sad truth of the way people are. But Eric Shingu was single-handedly the first person to bring Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to Stockton, California.
Oh wow.
Okay, and people need to know that if they don't know.
Okay.
You know, he used to drive from Stockton to Pleasant Hill, which is a good hour drive at least without traffic,
Mm-hmm.
to train at Caesar Gracie's. back in the 90s when they really had, it was a Shark Tank.
Okay.
That was back in the days when the Diaz brothers were there, Gilbert Melendez, all these MMA fighters that we know of today. Um, I think Ralph Gracie was still there. They were still the same school at the time. I don't think Ralph Gracie had branched off and opened up his own chain of schools yet.
Okay.
You had Dave Terrell, who I never met, but I know he was one of them, one of the greatest, most accomplished grapplers in the world. Trains out of I think his school's in Santa Rosa now. So Eric Shingle was amongst, and he wasn't. He was the elder statesman of the group at the time. He was well in his 40s
Okay.
when he decided to tackle that, you know, that that mission of learning jujitsu and bringing it to Stockton. And then finally, Cesar Gracie basically endorsed him to open up his own school here, and it was the first jiu-jitsu school. And he was my first instructor to introduce me to jiu-jitsu. Great guy. So the only thing that I would have stayed with him if I hadn't moved to the Bay Area.
Okay.
That was the only thing that you know kind of but Eric and Dennis, yeah, hello out there if they're out there, if they ever see this video. Hope
Oh,
all is
that's
well. Hope all is well with them.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So do you think that jujitsu, with that training with the jujitsu, I know you said that you want to combine that within your training with martial arts. And then that
Um,
also. Mhm.
oh yeah, go ahead, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
To me, it's not that I wanted to combine it.
Okay.
I kept everything separate
Mm, good.
in my mind. Like I never was blending things. Like
Okay.
I kept one thing,
Okay.
and one thing separate from everything. It's like, I guess you can call it, you can compare it to, you remember, I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but you remember it's like when Bo Jackson played football and baseball, right?
Yeah. Okay.
You remember those days? Nobody does that. Nobody does that anymore.
Nobody does that anymore.
Or when Deion Sanders, he played baseball and football in the same day. You know what I mean? But it's two different sports. So I
Yeah.
always treated it like that. I never try. I wasn't trying to blend the
Okay.
arts like that. I was
Mhm.
really just trying to. I empty my cup, is what we say, right? In martial arts, I come to you with an empty cup. I'm not here to say, oh well, in ESCRIMA we do this.
Okay.
You know, when I'm here, I know nothing. I'm here to learn from you. I'm here to absorb this, make it a part of, embed it into my system. That's
Yeah.
what I'm here for. So I wasn't. I never thought of it like I'm combining it. I mean, that comes later in life
Okay.
when something's already embedded in your mind, and you just find yourself thinking that way. Oh, as a matter of fact, if you're teaching somebody and maybe a move in a screamo where I take somebody down with the empty handed screamo technique. And then from here, I'm like, as a matter of fact, from here, you could just put him in an armbar jiu-jitsu style. Yeah, maybe like that.
Okay.
But, you're not necessarily combining that. That's just your personal repertoire. You're not, that's in your toolbox. So you're not really passing it on like, oh, this is an armbar just like jiu-jitsu. No, no, no. It's jiu-jitsu armbar. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Yeah, yeah.
You're like, no, no combinations, Joby.
Well, I mean, I know what you mean, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. So what else did you want to add to this interview? I know we're going to have you on
Oh,
again, and we're
okay.
going to go more into detail, um, and also go into more. But what else would you like to add to this interview?
Um, Really just that it's really a unique experience for me to share these things, these share my experience with you, you know, on these chats and this podcast or whatnot. Or um, I think if anything, I just if anybody watches this, if it any significance to anybody who watches or listens to our conversations and you know these meetups like this, it's just that never feel like you are limited from trying new things in life. Um, especially now, I would think it's easier
Yeah,
with with how you know just technology now. It's easier to connect with people. Um, there's a lot of things I didn't even touch on of what I had to do to meet. We skipped over some areas. I think when
I
we
think
went
we
to
did.
jujitsu. There's another area where I was training in another art in between that time. But yeah, we did that time. It's but like what I was gonna say was back then you had to there was no YouTube.
Yeah,
So you didn't know if somebody was gonna demonstrate um some kind of martial art or activity that was going to be to your liking or something that you the only way to know is you had to travel to that school to find out. And a
right.
lot of times being in Stockton, because this wasn't a major city like that, to go outside and want to learn other arts, you had to you were going on a drive.
Yeah,
Um you know, and you had to put in the time to find out if something was for you or not. Where
exactly.
nowadays, if you wanted to know what a martial art looks like, all you gotta do is get on YouTube and see what it looks like and see if it's not for you or no. I don't think I like that. That's not what I'm looking. You know, but back then you literally had to take a day of your time and go and maybe even in the first day you're not sure if this is for you, you gotta make a few trips. You gotta maybe join for a couple months.
Yeah,
So my thing now is if anybody gets anything out of hearing and listening to this is it's easier now to try out new things. Don't limit yourself. Because injuries do happen, and sometimes it's good to have another activity to fall back on instead of just sitting and getting depressed because you can't do the one activity you know how to do. There is something else you can do that maybe won't put too much strain on an injury that you had. Because maybe another martial art that you train in from time to time doesn't require you to to re-injure yourself. So you can take a break from that particular training and go back to focus on something else. And then in the meantime, your injury is healing now.
yeah,
And then you got to train the other art that you were, you know, maybe neglecting for a while. So now you got time to review on that because you were injured and now you were healed up. Now you go back to this art. So you know that was a personal experience of mine I'm grateful that because ultimately jujitsu's injuries that did overcome me and did prevent me from training it today because I just have too many injuries.
mhm,
But if it wasn't for the other arts that I did, I wouldn't be talking to you right now
right.
because it's not because jujitsu that that you know that everybody there in the Chicago group um, connected to me with. It was because of the Serrada,
Proud of.
and so I had Serrada and among other things. So yeah, if anybody can get anything from, they could you know maybe advice in their martial arts journey. Um, it would be that just keep an open mind to other things because there is room for other passions in your life. I believe so for everybody.
I believe so too. There's always a passion for different items and especially the arts. And you're living proof to it. You know, you're teaching these different techniques, um, and learning too. You know, and that's the main key. Like you actually say that you like to keep on learning. You want to learn new stuff. And a lot of people should continue to learn and advance from everything that they're learning too.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Like I mentioned in the video with Mike, I think I had said something I recall where I've had, just different colleagues and friends in the arts, in the martial arts training, where they find out that oh, you started training in that, but you already been training in a lot of stuff. Why do you keep searching for new styles and all this stuff? And I'm like, what do you mean why? Why not?
Exactly.
I mean, it's I feel like there's something there,
Yeah.
so it's just yeah. I remember mentioning that in the last video.
Yeah. And it's to keep an open mind. Um, just so you trained in different techniques and become a better person, or not even better person, but just to learn different things, right?
Right, right. There's always you'll never stop learning if
Yeah.
you allow yourself to keep learning. It's um I mean, there's a saying in martial arts. In jiu-jitsu there was a saying, once you get, and it applies to any martial art, I'm sure, but you know, when you reach the highest level, that's where your journey starts.
Okay.
It was, that journey from beginner to advanced. That was just that was just the beginning. That was just the foundation. Now the journey starts when you're advanced. That's where it all begins. So I mean, a lot of us, and that applies to everything in life. I'm sure, you
Yeah.
know, getting married and finding that person, that was just the beginning. The journey starts when life starts happening. When you guys start conflicting with living with each other. You know what I mean? That the things are, that yeah, I don't want that there. I want that here. You know how it is. I mean, that applies to life too. It's like people, well, I didn't sign up for this. Well, yes, you did. You
Right.
know? Yeah. So, yeah.
Yep. You have to suck it up and just keep on going. It's the
Right.
way I see
Yeah,
it.
right. Yeah.
And enjoy it, because I think life is too short to just limit yourself. You have to go beyond your limitations. And that's what I always tell people. You have to push yourself a bit harder each day. Even if it's uncomfortable, you have to be uncomfortable in order for you to get over that little stride. And the uncomfortableness will get you a little bit further out to learning a little bit more. And it's making it fun, basically, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'm actually really surprised. I touched on a lot. We touched on a lot today with I got really, really into the. I'm glad I went over the list of things that I remember we weren't able to touch on the last time.
yeah,
You know, when I look at the list now, I'm like, oh yeah, this is some of the things that you know. So we can definitely touch on more.
oh,
Like
yeah,
with some stuff is yeah, it'd be more or less a lot of the same, but just a different different avenues of outcomes.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
especially with the competitions that I started getting involved in with the jiu-jitsu and stuff. That's the whole topic on its own too.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
why I didn't even touch on it. I'll be
Right. Yeah.
honest.
It would have been like a lot more.
That's
We'll
another like
get
five
there.
hour. interview.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So let me end this.
Okay.
This is the Jovi Marie Show with Edward Garcia. Um, so follow him and follow, like, and subscribe. Down below, he'll have his bio and also his website and everything so you can look at his information through our online. Okay? Have a great one. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hold on. Let me